Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the World Explorer podcast. This is the podcast where we take a random prompt and create an entire world based around it. My name is Casey, and as always, I'm joined by our prompt master, Isaac.
Aloha, my good friends. So today we are world building tree sap. Yeah.
Oh no.
So, I had this idea about material gathering, and you know how usually people need to like chop down a tree to get their wood, or they need to go mining if they want to get their iron, or coal, or whatever other material it is. Wouldn't life be so much easier if we could just plug a tap into whatever material we needed, and then it just manifests from the tap for us?
So we're world building a world in which everything has sap.
Kind of. It's more like everything,
Is tapped. Can be
yeah.
tapped. That is the technical term for it, right?
Yes, I believe so. It's not that it's sap, but maybe like if you wanted wood, if you were to plug one of these taps into a maple tree, you would not get maple syrup. You would probably more get sawdust coming from it, or pellets, or something along those lines. Coal dust.
So you've created a world without maple syrup?
This is a world without maple syrup, which is interesting because we built a different world that was somewhat centered around maple syrup.
Yeah, but now I'm like sad because I like maple syrup. So
Okay,
but
maybe there's
continue.
two different types of taps. Maybe there's one that gives you maple syrup, one that gives you sawdust.
Look, the world doesn't need maple syrup. I can accept that a world exists out there without one. I just don't have to be happy about it.
Anyways, so this idea, I was thinking, the idea of just creating a world where you no longer necessarily need to gather materials normally, like through mining and stuff. It has very massive implications as to how the world shifts in terms of technology, in terms of occupations, in terms of construction and housing, heating for homes. Like everything is just sort of flipped on its head, because
Yeah.
you no longer have a bunch of people chopping down trees. Instead, you stick a tap in, you get the materials you need, and then you can reshape the material, and like people are more likely to probably compress it into whatever form they need. Or maybe it's not even sawdust or pellets that they're getting from it. Maybe it is more like a sap. Maybe it is more like a liquid that solidifies into the object that it came from.
There's so many like directions we can take with this. Like the whole reason why trees produce sap is because they're living organisms, and like the sap is the equivalent of our blood for them. So there's like that implication. There's also, is this still something that they can run out of, or is it that every object is producing them kind of like trees are, in which case that means you can only harvest at a certain time and you have to wait for things to replenish, but it also means you have unlimited resources.
Yeah, I think that this would be an area where you do have to wait for it to replenish, but you do essentially have unlimited resources in a way. Like, it's certainly easier to obtain the resources this way, because again, you're not looking at going and mining a bunch of coal. You just get a big hunk of coal or several big hunks of coal, plug your tap in, and just harvest it every once in a while.
I mean, is it gonna be like sap where it's seasonal?
I
Is there
would
a particular
think
season,
so.
or so? I not to make your magical sounding world technical, but as that's my favorite thing to do, I'm gonna do it anyways. The whole thing about like sap is the reason we harvest it near the winter time is because that's when a tree doesn't need it as much. It's kind of like how we harvest honey. And it's the tree is slowing down because it's cold, and therefore we can harvest its sap easier. Is this like just a thing where winter is a big harvesting season, almost reverse of like what we technically think of like harvesting seasons?
Well, I don't think this is necessarily sap. This could be some sort of other uh material that we'll have to come up with a name for, some sort of form of item. Like it's still
I
coal,
mean, but you're
but
suggesting it's like multiple items, right? Like almost anything can do this.
yeah. Now I think that's another thing we got to figure out is like what types of items can do this, like and what can't. Are you able to stick it into literally any material and get more of that material? In which case, like, where does that material come from? Are we following the laws of thermodynamics, or like, are we able to get something out of nothing, or
Uh, I guess it kind of depends if we want it to be like I think the first thing we need to establish is this the materials producing the sap, or is whatever device they're using the thing that's producing the sap?
I don't
Because
know? Because at that point,
that
why do you need the
affects things.
material if the device is the thing that's doing it?
Well, what I mean is that the device has the ability to take a material and make the sap out of it, and therefore it could do it to multiple things. Or otherwise, we're living in a world where certain things are producing sap, and we kind of have to establish that.
Okay, so if that was the case, I would think that maybe at that point it would be converting whatever it is touching into sap, but it's not draining it from it. It's actually like taking the object and turning it into the sap.
Which means that items would still be. You wouldn't have unlimited resources in that method. So the one where the tap works, it's unlimited.
Yeah, you'd still have to take down trees
Yeah.
and mine and do all of that.
I mean, it'd be easier. You just stick the thing in and it does the work for you, but it is still a society with limited resources, unlike the other one, which I think takes more world building, but it's the one where I don't know. I guess every object has a lifeblood that you can then harvest, but then it's gonna keep producing.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it would be. But then you gotta ask the question, of like,
How are they reproducing?
yeah, how are they reproducing? But then you also have the question of, uh, how this affects things like economy, because the idea of economy is there's supply and demand. Well, now you have endless supply. If you can just,
Well, I think it is a thing that we'd have to limit it, kind of like with the maple syrup, which is why I was thinking like a seasonal thing. Like this is almost a world where they're growing their food in the summer and the springs, and then when fall and winter hit, that's when they're harvesting more, I don't know, dead resources like coal and lumber and all that stuff because they need the cold weather to produce it.
okay, so do we want to get into like, I guess, the biology of a lump of coal then? Because
I mean, if we're going with that route, then yes, I guess we'd have to get into the biology of a lump of coal.
I mean, I don't know if we want to. Again, this is assuming that we're calling it sap and it works the same way as sap, as like maple syrup
Mm-hmm.
does. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's the question. Do we want to go that route? Because if we go that route, that's like I do not know enough about biology to do this, but
I mean, fun fact about coal, it used to have a biology, but the fact that it's now coal means it doesn't anymore. That's the extent of my coal knowledge.
I mean it's true. You know, at this point, I'm really wondering: is this world even gonna work?
Well, I mean, we could simplify it. We don't have to explain everything. We can use the as long as it makes somewhat sense, people won't question it model. And just the idea that in this world, materials are able to, I don't know, in the sense they have their own blood that they can replenish from either like the soil or air or sunlight or whatever the heck it is. And so over every now and then you're able to harvest that from these things. You just always have to be careful that you don't accidentally, dry it out and then it can't produce anything else and then it dies.
I'm gonna say it's essence from the center of the earth. It's magical, ethereal essence.
Exactly. We don't need to understand how it happens. All you need to know is that everything now is kind of like trees in that it has this thing that can be seen as blood or sap.
And if you harvest it, you can then essentially reshape it and like mold it into whatever you need. So, like if you want to, I don't know, if you for some weird reason want a door made out of coal, you can just harvest the coal sap, stick it into a mold for a door, and then wait, I don't know, a few hours, and it suddenly you have a door made out of coal for some reason.
I mean, that's another question. Does this stuff come out like cold? So, like, if you have iron and you harvest iron, is people able to make like iron sculptures with their hands using the sap?
I would think so. Yeah.
Because that would be cool. And then I assume you can like still mix saps together to get things like brass and steel. I assume.
Okay. I would say yes, and I just thought about something. So the essence of the center of the earth, again, whatever it is that's causing the sap stuff to appear. What if this was also the stuff that? What if the sap was like half, I don't know, essence and half whatever the material is, and that essence is what allows the material to become in this liquid state, and over
Yeah.
time, once it's been removed from a material, over time it starts to, I guess you could say, evaporate in a sense. It
Evaporate, and that what makes it solidify?
Yes, and this way we don't have to worry about like water being mixed with things, because obviously water is not gonna cause coal to suddenly turn into liquid and then evaporate and become solid. It doesn't work like that. But if we add in this new element, this essence, then it can make everything liquefied and then solidified afterwards. So you can still work with it with your hands. You don't have to worry about burning yourself with molting iron or anything.
Yeah, and then this also kind of introduces this new idea of all of this stuff has to be produced in the mine versus what we do now, which is where we mine things, we take it out, we send it at someplace else to produce stuff. Now everything has to be produced in the mine because the moment it comes out, there's a time limit.
Well, at that point, you remove the coal, you set it up like in a building or in a warehouse or factory, whatever, and then you plug the tap in.
Yeah, but then it's no longer connected to the essence.
Okay, so it has to actually be connected to the earth. It has to be embedded into the earth to work.
Well, to replenish, I think if you don't care about replenishing it, you could transport it somewhere else and then just drain it dry and dispose of it. But I think the whole idea of it is the moment that it loses all of its essence, it just becomes an empty void and it can't gain any of it back. Or maybe there is a connection that if you sever it, then it's gone.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, so like the coal has to like stay within the wall. And if you accidentally like break a specific piece out, maybe you know what it is, maybe you don't, you could accidentally sever its connection and then suddenly you can dry out.
Well, is it possible to replant something like coal or iron? Because I'm thinking that that there are just earthquakes and erosion and just a bunch of other stuff that's causing dirt and
Mm.
stone and things to move constantly. So, are you able to like replant a lump of coal? If I stick my shovel in the
I,
ground and then I leave it there, will I start growing an iron tree?
I think if it still has some of its essence left, then yes. But if it doesn't, then no. So if your object is like completely solidified, it doesn't have any essence left, it's just the iron. It doesn't have the thing that makes life, so therefore it's not going to. But I think yeah, I could see if you like took out the sap and then you poured the sap into the ground. Maybe it doesn't happen all the time. It can't always find a connection, but occasionally it can connect to the earth, and then you get a new like coal being that can then keep producing more of the sap.
It's kind of like how seeds don't always grow stuff. Although this time it'd be
Except
more
a
often,
lot.
you would not manage to grow
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, it's kind of very lucky if you manage to get it grow. Because at the same time, we don't want to produce giant coal factories and then, or things like I feel like there should still there has to still be some type of skill and care that has to go into like creating these things. Otherwise, I don't know, the world feels unbalanced, and I don't like unbalanced worlds or overpowered worlds.
Yeah,
I don't know how to describe it.
overpowered is a good word to use.
Okay, then we'll go with that one. Yeah.
Uh,
But now you have a world of coal doors.
cold doors and iron doors and like whatever else you need. Now, I imagine in this world, because of the way that people are able to just constantly get materials so easily, things like the Industrial Revolution come very soon.
The interesting thing about the Industrial Revolution is that it took so long because we had to learn how to separate these things and heat them up quickly. But the whole idea of like factories isn't really a thing, because the idea of the factory is that you have to produce like coal and fire to create things. And also, a lot of the reasons why we've gone into like plastics and science and all that stuff and inventing these new chemicals and things that again need these big factories is because we knew we had limited iron and steel and coal, and that at some point we were going to run out, and so we have to find new things to use instead. But we don't have that drive anymore. We have this stuff unlimitedly, which almost makes me think plastic never becomes a thing because there's no need for that type of innovation.
I mean, plastic is still a very useful material. You don't always use metal in place of plastic when you can, because metal is generally heavier. It's not as soft. Sometimes you need something softer. It's not as flexible. It doesn't have as much give and recoil as plastic often does and where you need it. Uh, like, plastic is great. I mean, we built robots that had some plastic on them because not because it was
Yeah.
lighter weight and uh it could be bent.
Yeah, it's just the drive towards plastic I don't think is going to be as strong in a world like this. And also, I don't think like plastic is going to become. I think plastic will have its select few uses, but I don't see it becoming as popularized as it is today. Like today, everything is plastic, and we're all now realizing that maybe that's not the greatest thing in the world because it doesn't degrade.
Yeah, I don't think that it would be quite as common as it is in our world, but it would still be a thing, I would think.
It's an interesting thing to think about. Is if we had unlimited resources, would we even bother with the sciences that would lead to plastics? Or would our sciences take us somewhere else? Like flexible iron, would that be a thing we'd start developing? You know, all of a sudden we can mix things together easier than we ever could, or things that we never were able to before. Like, coal is no longer needed for burning, so instead this coal could be mixed with like iron and with like copper and all these other things to create even new elements that before weren't possible because they don't mix, but in a liquid form maybe they do.
Yeah, this does beg the question, like, what kinds of things people can make when they can mix like any two elements or any two items.
Like another question is, does this thing work on something like diamond?
I would think so.
Because in that case, we have like diamonds are incredibly strong. Can we have diamond structures? Can buildings get really, really tall now?
I would say yes, although I don't know if diamond would be the best building material because just because it's strong,
Well,
but
the reason we don't is because we don't have enough.
yeah, but even then, like I know that diamonds are supposed to be incredibly strong, but I think they're also very brittle. Like, or they could be cut easy. I don't remember what it is exactly. But
Diamonds cannot be cut easy. The only thing that can cut a diamond is a diamond.
I can't remember what it was, but there's something about diamond where it could be easily broken despite the fact that it is incredibly strong. But I think it's because it has no give. Like it's brittle, but it's solid. Meaning like one good solid hit will break a diamond.
I didn't think that was true. I don't know if that's
I
true or not.
remember a game theory video from a long time ago about why you don't want diamond armor, and the reason is because one good sword strike will destroy it.
Maybe that's might be where it's coming from, but we can mix diamond now with like other materials, and you can build entire structures and things out of them now, which is still cool, even if it might not be practical. So I don't know like how strong like gemstones and stuff are. I just now know where in the world we're building with them makes sense. So Emerald City from Wizard of Oz, you don't need tinted glasses anymore. You could just actually build a city out of
Yeah,
emeralds.
yeah, that's a totally a possibility now. What else could you do with like endless resources? Like, what are the sorts of things that we want to do but we can't because you just don't have the materials?
I mean, other than like skyscrapers and like, there's a reason spaceships are so expensive and stuff is because of the materials. Is does that mean like space travel happens sooner?
Probably.
When you have like unlimited resources, there's just unlimited possibilities, and it just seems like we have to spend so much time in this world figuring out how to replace our resources when we start running low. But it's just the idea of a place where we don't have to worry about that. It's kind of unobtainable, and I don't know, it almost seems too easy. It's almost like a world I wouldn't want to live
Yeah,
in, because it just seems like an invention
I th- I
just
was thinking
happens
about that
quickly.
because I'm like, that's part of the reason I was wondering if this world would work because it just seems so uninteresting. It's like, congratulations, you have endless resources. But now I'm thinking like, if maybe we go back to the combining of different elements and like what that would bring about. But the problem is,
Sounds
I am
fun.
not a physicist. I am not a chemist. I don't know what that would do, like, or what it could combine to get other things. Maybe there's some sort of new building materials you could get if you were able to combine certain things. You could fuse wood and metal if you wanted to.
Oh, could you get like a wood texture, which is like a metal look, with like the strength of metal? I don't
Probably.
know what that would look. I don't know how those things would mix together.
I would say yes, you could do that.
But sounds cool. Is it flammable still?
I I think maybe somewhat. Something I'm thinking of, it might.
So like it sets on fire, but it doesn't burn.
I think it gets set on fire. Well, I don't know because if you mix it well to where it's like a perfect 50-50 split, I think it's possible for it to burn and it would get weakened once it's done, but it would still be, yeah, because most of the metal would still remain, and it would be hard for
Hmm.
the inner layers, like the inner part of the material, to actually burn. So it would be like somewhat fire resistant, and not totally fireproof, and it could burn, but it would even after you burn it, it would still carry some of the properties of wood. So maybe this is the type of material that people would use uh, for when they want something strong and sturdy like metal, but it needs to have some sort of some give like wood.
And maybe it could also be like a design element as well, like giving metal certain color or texture of wood.
Probably like if you just make sort of like a thin outer layer out of wood.
I know. I just had like the thought of like, instead of the mahogany wood, which is the most popular wood type of museums, I swear, you now just have metal mahogany desks instead.
Yeah. Uh,
Except mahogany wouldn't become popular because you have unlimited. Unlike nowadays, there is no mahogany really left, and that's why it's such a big deal.
I was thinking about how the going back to the wood combined with metal thing and how they might combine it to get metal that has some sort of give. There's already metal out there that has give, but generally it's not the most sturdy metal in the world. It's not necessarily the strongest. Um, but in this case, we could combine just the absolute strongest metals we have, and then with some wood, and it would have the same sort of give as wood, or at least some of it. It would be somewhat. It would have some give like wood, but it would also be as strong as like the strongest tank.
But what's that? So, like, what effect would that have on like warfare and stuff? When you
There,
just
now
have
we're getting
unbreakable
interesting.
shields. You know, you have unbreakable shields and unlimited resources. Like, if people want to fight, like, where do they go? Like, you can't do anything. There's no stopping people, which means that people, what, are they forced into like eternal peace because they just can't do anything? Do you have just a few people in the uppers who are just really good at psychological warfare and can keep people tamed, and for that reason they're in power and everyone else is not? I don't know. We've created a world where you can't fight.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of wars can be over something like resources, but in this world there's unlimited resources. However, what if they were in a sense limited? Because if you can't constantly mine them all, or you can't constantly collect all the resources you need, like maybe something like wood would be very plentiful because trees are everywhere.
I bet.
But
Yeah.
something like coal or metal, if you're in an area or a country that just doesn't have that much of that just naturally in the ground, you would have limited access to it. You would still have some, you just wouldn't necessarily have as much as you need constantly. And so if another country that was plentiful in the resources you had suddenly cut you off from them or wasn't willing to trade for some reason, then that could be something that sparks warfare.
So it's less. So certain places would have access to certain materials, and other places wouldn't. And because of that, they could have different resources, different tactics for warfares, different abilities to override each other, and then battles can still ensue.
Yeah. And you could say that, well, maybe there would be enough resources in each country to make it possible for these different countries
That's
to have
boring.
all of their resources.
Very boring.
But yeah, I'm thinking we're world building. We don't need to make it like our world where you really could feasibly do that. Let's say that we have different countries that predominantly have like say one or two types of materials. You have one that is filled with a bunch of different types of wood and different trees and forests everywhere. And so they are very plentiful in wood, and they've mastered the craft of like making stuff out of wood. Maybe there's other countries where they don't have quite as many trees. You've got something like a desert country. Like that's just what their landscape's mostly
I
like.
hate to be the desert country.
You've got another one that is mostly mountains. So they get a lot of stone, coal, iron, ore deposits. You've got another one that is beach. I don't know. I'm running out of materials.
What is up with you? There's some places where only one area might have access to something like diamonds, or one area might have access to emeralds. One area might have access to coal. One area might have access to iron. This could be a world in which, because we have like this essence could have branches coming out of it that feed into specific things. So sure, this one area might have trees, and it might also have coal, and it might have iron deposits, but those are things without sap. They're not being fed by essence, because the only thing in their area that is being fed by essence is, say, like their diamonds.
Yes, now we're getting interesting.
Now we can have conflict, which is what every good world needs.
Yeah, that's where all the interesting stuff comes from, is conflict. I think that really is one of the best ways to world build, is just ask, okay, how can I use this thing as a weapon? Or how does this thing affect warfare? Yeah. And then suddenly you've got conflict, and things are very interesting. Also, there's just the natural human instinct and intention, like, of checking if we can use something as a weapon. Because we're really, really good at figuring out all the different ways that we can possibly kill each other with things.
It's quite fascinating, like the human mix of desire to destroy everything in its path, while also simultaneously creating everything it possibly can think of.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
and terrifying.
But yeah, we're really really good at innovation and building stuff, but we're also really really good at figuring out how to break other people's innovation.
Yeah, it's like us with the AI generators. Like,
Yep.
how can we break this? Let's destroy it. But then we come onto this podcast once a week and we create entire new worlds out of nothing. So,
Yeah, it is great fun to take the AI and just cause it to have an existential crisis.
anyways, so now we have worlds with deposits in which the Earth core is just, or the essence of the Earth, whatever we're calling it, has these like rivers that attach to one specific item. Um, the world kind of looks like an octopus right now in my head. And now you have people who can fight over it. So now we have, I don't know, the society building for this would be really fun because now instead of saying, oh, you can still have like mixed societies. Like if two societies live near a border, they might be more willing to trade and they have mix. But like the closer you go to the core of the essence and the minds that you're creating with those essence, the more it's just focused mostly on that one material and how they do that. Like a woodland is probably like terrified of fire, maybe, or I don't know. Like, what would coal buildings look like? Is that even practical, or is there something about the essence and the way it solidifies things that makes it practical?
I think that normally coal probably would not be a very good building material. I mean, you got have a problem with something like coal dust, although I don't know if the coal is solid enough after it's been solidified, you probably don't have to worry too much about something like coal dust. It's just a rock.
Yeah. I know you can build coal houses now, just like every 2003 Minecraft player.
Exactly. But yeah, Minecraft didn't come out in 2003.
2010. I think it was 2010 when they had coal blocks. I don't know. When I was like 12, I built a coal house, just in survival too. I had like a coal and redstone floor. It was really ugly, but I did it.
All houses were ugly in the early days of Minecraft. No one knew how to build anything.
That's not true. That's not true. There are some pretty houses. I have a world in like I think 2014 on the Xbox, and it's got some cool houses on it.
I think that's more around the time that people started figuring stuff out.
The jungle update. That's when everything changed. This is not a podcast about Minecraft. Half our viewers might not even know what the game is, really.
Anyway, well, everybody knows what Minecraft is. Anyway, yeah, I think that something like a coal house would be practical in a land that has essentially unlimited coal.
Unlimited coal.
And it's very easy to form into whatever shape you want. Like, there would just be a factory where people go, then they just produce a ton of coal boards, essentially, that are used to build houses with, or coal blocks.
Eating with, like, coal spoons and dishware.
Okay, that I don't think would be as common.
I don't know. I don't know how, like, the solidifying works, if it, like, really... If it gets... I mean, if you've learned how, like, to coat it with something.
Yeah, if you learn to coat...
that it kind of seals it.
Yeah, but generally you need another essence to coat something properly, I would think.
Oh, yeah, or, here's the thing. Like, these people still have access to other resources. It's just they have to produce it the same way we do. Or manage it the same way we do. So say, like, plastics does become a thing. Why not have, like, coal spoons with, like, a plastic layer over it as silverware?
Because coal is heavy? And I feel
is coal heavy?
I mean, I don't think it's that heavy, but it might be heavier. I think it might be heavier than a normal piece of silverware, because silverware is thin.
I find it, like, really funny that we're talking about coal. Like, coal's the one we're gravitating to, when coal is the one material that is made out of dead things.
It's also, like, one of the most common things. Like...
Yeah, like, what... Would coal even, like, qualify for this? Because I don't think it actually will. I think, like, the essence would have to go into things that... I mean, we say trees qualify. So I guess maybe coals qualify because of that. But in that case, there's a time in this world where coal didn't exist. But then it started existing, and then the essence declared that it actually wanted a river, wanted a connection to coal, and so it branched out. Because that's an interesting element that just whatever this earth core essence thing is that all of a sudden it could decide that, hey, this is a new resource in the world and I'm going to allow it to be mass produced based off of my essence. Because if that's the case, if someone produces plastics and the essence just notices that, would there be a chance that, like, future time in this world, it reaches out, connects to some plastics that are in the world and starts producing plastic sap?
I think so. But the thing is, it's also region based.
Yeah, well, it would select a new region. Well, what's the place that's most likely to gravitate towards plastic? A place that doesn't have access to a bunch of the other resources other places do.
Would it be like a place rich with oil? I don't know. Here's the thing. I was thinking to myself, oh well, maybe you could get a bunch of like endless oil essentially, but oil's already a liquid.
Yeah, I don't think it would work on liquid. I think we need to draw the line somewhere, and I think liquid should be it. No liquid.
I mean,
Has to be solid that can then, so the essence can turn it into liquid. Can we agree on that?
yes,
Sound like a
and
good line?
yeah,
Okay.
and I think that maybe it just wouldn't be a thing. Like maybe it has to be some sort of natural resource, like again, wood, coal, stone, iron, like things that you can just naturally find in the ground
Mm.
or growing out of the earth. But something like
So you don't think like the
plastic
essence would see a landmines with or a landfill that's full of plastic and decide, hey, I want to mass produce this?
I mean, maybe if there was a full-on landmine and you planted a
Okay.
not landmine, landfill. If there was a full-on landfill and it was like a massive amount of plastic and it was planted, maybe there would just be like that tiny percent chance that the Earth would connect to it, or the essence would connect to it, and then but once it does, suddenly it's region based and now all of the plastic starts getting affected by this, or a lot of it starts getting affected by this. And would plastic start growing? Like, would we get like plastic growing in the ground? Does it suddenly essentially become a plant now and that you can tap into? I think that's what would happen.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I don't think plastic should ever be this because the problems us would create for the world. Like, we have enough issues with the amount of plastic we create and trying to get rid of it. Imagine a world in which the earth itself is producing this thing that is going to, in the end, kill it. Which I find funny, and I find like an.
Yeah.
But also, I think like such an interesting story because now you have these plastics being created. You have these people who are realizing that, hey, plastics might not be the greatest thing for the world. We can mass produce it, but we also can't like destroy it really well. So it kind of just builds up, and now the Earth is creating it, and it's building up massively. Oh no, we have to sever this our own planet's connection to the plastic for its own good. We got to perform surgery on our planet. It's pretty much created a tumor, and we've got to cut it out. And I don't know, journey to the center of the earth or something crazy to try to cut the sever or study the essence.
So now you've got this big journey to center the earth thing, but then your of course your super villain for this story is going to be the big bad businessman who wants to,
sell plastics. Yeah,
wants to sell plastic products and damage the Earth's environment, because that's always an easy target for stories. Especially environmental ones.
We've created a story in which in the beginning we solved most of like our environmental issues, and now we've gone to like a full environmental crisis by the end of it.
Yep. With again, big bad businessman. I'm imagining the guy from the Lorax. I can't remember his name. From like Air.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name either. That's a movie I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, that's the guy I'm envisioning wanting to just produce endless plastic. And then maybe they eventually learn what recycling is, because this isn't a thing they really needed to worry about before. Because it's like, oh, something went wrong. It's like your wooden object broke, your wooden table broke. Well, just throw it in the ocean. It'll deteriorate over time when the plastic's not doing that.
Plastics don't do that. They just float, and then all the poor sea turtles die.
And then now you've got the evil businessman cackling, twirling his mustache. I shall murder all the sea turtles.
Pretty much.
This really would just be a stereotypical, like, businessman wants to be mean to environment because money.
Well, I mean, there's other ways you could do the story. You don't have to do that. But it does lean towards that type of story.
That's just
very
what came into my mind was just, again, big corporation person. Because, again, it's always such an easy target for stories, again, especially about being environmentally friendly.
I think Wall-E with the robot.
Yeah, although that one, they decided not to go with big. Well, they went with big business, like by and large.
But the people died out, and then the robot took over.
But then they also at least tried to clean up the Earth.
Kinda.
They just did it, too late. Kinda. They just weren't very good at it. They decided, okay, Earth's a mess. Let's make a bunch of robots to clean it up, and then send everyone into space until it's done.
And then they just never came back.
And all the robots died.
Except for Wall-E, who had to kill his own friends for parts.
Well, I don't think he was killing his own friends. He was just salvaging from their corpses.
Doesn't make it much better, though. Wall-E's a really dark movie if you think about it too long.
But the cockroach is so cute.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't know where else to go with this, to be honest. I'm kind of happy with it.
Yep, I think this works. It eventually got interesting.
Yeah, sorry it took so long. Some worlds just take longer to get to the good parts. That's why you keep with it.
The retention for this episode is going to be 0%.
No, you know what? I hope people have enough faith in us to trust us that eventually we'll get somewhere. It's the thing about this podcast is that you have to just have faith that we're gonna get somewhere, which I know is asking for a lot, but normally we deliver. Like, I think there's only like one or two where we're like, yeah, no, we got nothing, guys. Yeah, well, I guess we'll just say goodbye then. And we'll see you next week for another Worlds and another build and another story, and more weirdness. So yeah, bye.
How bad can I be? I'm just building the economy. How plastic can everything be? I don't know where to go with this. Something else. Environmentally friendly.
You have not, like, sung an outro since, like, the first 3-4 months.
Goodbye.